For section E.3, part 2, we're going to go ahead and finish talking about the first set of rules for exponents. In order to do this section, you need to understand how to add, subtract, and multiply integers, understand how to evaluate exponents, and understand the principles of combining like terms and distribution. Upon completing this presentation, you will be able to apply the products to powers and quotients to power rules to simplify expressions. So the next two rules that we are going to look at is products to powers and quotients to powers. And these rules are very similar to things that we've done in the past. When evaluating products to powers, what we want to think about distribute in quotations. This is not a technical distribution because distributing is always multiplication across addition or subtraction. But we can think of it being similar to distribution because what we want to do is everything inside the parentheses needs to be raised to the exponent that is on the outside. So we'll look at an example of the products to powers rule. Let's say we have something like 2x raised to the fourth. Well, remember that what this is 2 times x times 2 times x times 2 times x times 2 times x. And what we can do is combine our numbers together. We can rearrange this so that we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 and x times x times x times x. And if we rewrite this with exponents, what is this equal to? This is 2 to the fourth and x to the fourth. And so notice that all we did was basically, again in quotations, distribute the exponent to each thing inside the parentheses. Now, one thing to note is that exponents only distribute in quotations over multiplication. It does not distribute over addition or subtraction. And we'll see that later on. So the quotients to power is the same thing. Again, everything inside the parentheses we want to raise to the nth power. So we get in the numerator a to the n over b to the n. So now, when working with exponents, think about the terms distribute and combine like terms. In the past, distribute meant multiply everything inside by the number on the outside. Similarly, when we have an exponent on the outside, you want to distribute it by multiplying the exponents on the inside by the one on the outside. In the past, combining like terms meant add or subtract the coefficients. Similarly, when you combine bases, you will add or subtract the exponents. Also, note that you can only combine x's with x's, y's with y's, etc. If doing both operations, we still have to follow order of operations. We will multiply before we add or subtract. So now let's go ahead and look at some examples of these. So one thing to note is starting in this section, we will not only want to distribute our exponent, but we will also want to evaluate the number, which we did not do in the previous section. What do I mean by evaluate the number? What I mean is, what is it actually equal to? We don't want to leave the number part in exponential form. We want to actually say what it is equal to. Okay, so let's look at a couple examples of the products to powers and quotients to powers rules. So we'll work with the products to powers rules first. Let's go ahead and look at example A. So we have 5x cubed. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to clear the parentheses. So I want to go ahead and distribute the cube to each one of these things. So what we're going to end up with is 5 cubed, and then x cubed is just x cubed. The last thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and evaluate the number portion of this. So 5 cubed, that's going to be 3 5s multiplied together. 5 times 5 is 25, times one more is 125. And so our final answer is 125x cubed. And we're done. If we look at example B, the first thing that I want to do is again distribute the exponent of 5. Now you do want to be very careful here, because note that the negative is inside parentheses. And so when we distribute our exponent, we get negative 2 raised to the 5th. And then now we have y to the 4th raised to the 5th. Since we are distributing an exponent, we want to multiply the exponents. And so we should get y to the 20th. Okay, so now if we evaluate the number portion, we have negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, times negative 2 is negative 8, times negative 2 is 16, times negative 2 is 32, or negative 32. If you want, remember that we can go ahead and just figure out what 2 to the 5th is, and since our exponent is odd, we keep the sign. And so we get negative 32 y to the 20th. And we're done with that one. So now let's look at the last one for the powers to products rule. So again, I want to go ahead and distribute the cube to each one of these things. And this is kind of more of where we see the distribute going on. So if I apply the cube to a 5, I end up with 5 cubed, which is 125. I want to cube x cubed. We're going to multiply the exponents, so I get x to the 9th. I want to cube y to the 6th. We multiply the exponents, giving us y to the 18th. And I want to cube the 4, z to the 4th, and we get z to the 12th. And we're done. So hopefully this last example kind of showed you more of how you can think of this as being distribution. And so note that we will always apply the exponent to the number, but when it comes to the variables, we are going to just multiply by whatever exponent is on the outside. Okay, so now let's look at some quotients to powers rules, and just keep in mind that it's the same thing. Everything inside the parentheses I need to raise to the exponent. So for instance, on example D, we have x over 4 squared. So I want to square everything inside. X squared is just x squared over 4 squared. If we simplify this, we get x squared over what is 4 squared equal to, and that's going to be 4 times 4, which is 16. And that's it. So now let's go over to example E. Example E, again, I have x squared over 5. I want to cube the whole thing. So remember that we want to distribute the 3 to everything inside. So we get x to the 6th. Remember, we want to multiply the exponents. Over 5 cubed is 125. And that's it. All right, for example F, we want to again distribute the exponent of 5. So we get 2 to the 5th. We're going to multiply all of our exponents by 5. So we get a, 3 times 5 is 15. And b to the 4 times 5 is 20. 2 to the 5th is 32. We did negative 2 to the 5th. 2 to the 5th is just 32. And we'll keep our variables and our exponents. And we're done with that one. And so that is your products to powers and your quotients to powers rules. So when will we see this again? We will revisit these rules throughout this module as we expand into multiplying and dividing more complex polynomials. We will also use these basic rules when working with rational and radical expressions. So now go ahead, take a few minutes to try the following problems on your own. Go ahead and take a minute to pause the presentation as you do that before moving on to the next slide. And so now for a final thought, please take a few minutes to answer the following questions. How confident are you with the material presented in this presentation? What from this section needs to be explained further? And how much more practice do you need in order to be comfortable with the topic?